Hey folks, BlackCross here, and welcome to another entry to Deep Dive into Gaming. So, if you remember, E3 got, not so much a very impressive, display, and honestly, it was kind of disappointing. But, out of all the stuff they kind of showed off, the one thing that kind of got me hyped up the most was actually the re-release remaster, rebuild from the ground up Shadow of Colossus for the PS4. In all honesty, I was actually kind of shocked that they were considering doing this. Like, I was like, we've got it for PlayStation 3. I'm pretty sure if it ain't, it should have been. We have a PS4 version of it. But I was like, who asked for this one? And I was looking at it, and it was just like, I don't care, really. I really don't, you know. It's nice to see that this game that was, like, in terms of, like, pushed to the boundaries limit, this one is, like, the one game that kind of stands out of the PS2 line. Like, there are a bunch of cool, awesome PS2 games and everything like that, but in terms of, like, pushing boundaries of gameplay, Shadow of Colossus was just that gameplay that was like, it really was ahead of its time, technically, when you think about it. Like, the gameplay aspects of just climbing up a Colossus and fighting it. It just, that's the crazy thing. You don't realize that not a lot of games back then did stuff like that. Or as far as I know, I haven't seen that before then. So it's just, to see that on the PlayStation 2 is just kind of crazy. Really, it really is. And when you consider how big some of these colossi are, it's massive, and it's insane too. But I figured since they're doing a PS4 version of it, I figured why not do a deep dive into gaming and talk about my experiences with Shadow of Colossus. So first off, I knew about Shadow of Colossus years ago. And at the time, this was of course on like G4 and stuff, where they did like video game stuff, whether they be cheat codes, new releases, E3 information, and stuff like that. This is like the actual televised version of what YouTube is technically comprised of, the majority of it anyway. So, but that besides that point, the point is that one of the things that they showed off sometimes was that of Shadow of Colossus and stuff. And I looked at it, and it just looked so freaking crazy to me. I was like, I gotta figure out how to get this one. And eventually I did get it for PS2 at the time. And when I played it and everything like that, it looked freaking insane. I was scaling through all the colossi, fighting them one by one and everything like that. It was just, holy shit, it was insane. At the time, though, if I had, like, one complaint that I had, which, awkwardly enough, on the PlayStation 3 version, they fixed it, I think. In my opinion, it looks that way. They fixed the camera problems. In the PS2 version, the camera was very wonky. Like, you were just, like, imagine a drunk version of, like, the Mario camera angle. It was just going all over the place, and it just, oh gosh. The bad thing was that it makes it harder whenever you're like on aggro, the horse, and you're trying to get around the colossi, because sometimes aggro does aid you in certain fights. So some of those moments, they were kind of difficult, but on the PlayStation 3, I noticed that the camera was extremely toned up to where it was actually controllable. Either that or they fixed like a frame issue or whatever. I'm not quite sure what they did with it. But to me, the camera was very, very much improved in the PlayStation 3. And whenever I got done playing Shadow of Colossus, I eventually found out that there was a game that came out before it called Ico. And at the time, I did get the PS2 version of Ico. Unfortunately, though, when I got, I want to say I was, halfway through it, I didn't really care much for it. I played through it, and I was like, this is definitely not Shadow of Colossus. I was just... Not to say that it was terrible, because I actually have a different viewing of it now in comparison to, what I did when I first played it, but I was just, I was underwhelmed by it. I was like, what the hell is this, anyway? I was just like... You're taking this girl with you all over the place. You're fighting these shadow creatures, whatever they were, and it was just like, what am I even looking at? But now, after actually playing through it the entire way on the PlayStation 3 re-release, I kind of have a different feel for what Ico really is. It's not really a intense combat experience. It's meant to be an explored, I suppose you could say a puzzle adventure game, I suppose you could say. Because technically that's what it really is, mostly. It's mostly just more of a puzzle explorer game. In fact, when you consider the fact what Shadow of Colossus really consists of, it also is a puzzle game. Just more of a puzzle action-oriented game. And, because, you're climbing up the Colossi, and you're using all different forms of structure that surrounds the environment. You're either using patches of fur and moss that's attached to the Colossus, and then the fact that some of these Colossus have ridges all around them, and you're using those ridges to kind of get around obstacles and stuff. So in a sense, it kind of is a puzzle platformer action game, as weird of a combination as that sounds. But it does make sense when you look at it that way. But still, to this day, in my personal opinion, I thought Shadow of Colossus still stands out to this day. And much like Star Fox 64, which, again, it seems kind of weird for me to say it, but I thought in terms of graphics, I thought it was very well put. I thought that it still stands out to this day as a graphical enhanced game. There's really no reason to do a re-release version of it. Because, when Star Fox 64 came out, it was intended to look like puppets, obviously. So, at the time, the game was still graphically well done, and it worked really well for the 3DS when it came out. And Shadow of Colossus had a little bit of a graphical improvement, but it still stands out to this day. It really does. So, I was really shocked to see that it's getting a rebuilt, remastered version for the PS4 next year. I was just really shocked. Again, not to say I was disappointed, just really, really shocked that they are actually doing that. And it makes me happy. My only thing that I do want to know, and this is the big thing in my personal opinion, because we have the Crash trilogy that's coming out later on this month, I believe. Yeah, it's coming out later on this month. And there are one little different thing that's being added into the game. And that's the fact that you get to play as Coco, which is Crash's sister. You get to play as her in all 3 games, which I thought was interesting. I was like, that's actually a pretty cool extra feature to add to it, Something simple, nothing else needed to be done to it. It makes me wonder, though, what new will they bring to the rebuilt version of Shadow of Colossus? Because whenever I looked into Shadow of Colossus, I realized technically they had a potential list of other Colossus that they could have added. A lot of different things. But the only reason why they cut them out was because of the fact that the way that they talked about how the process of fighting these Colossus would be carried out, it would make sense for why they didn't, because it would be a little bit complicated to put that into action. Again, not to say that they were bad designs, it's just I can see why they discarded them, because in terms of how you were to go about fighting these Colossus, it would be pretty challenging to get through that. But honestly, I wouldn't mind actually seeing 2 more extra Colossus in the new HD re-release. I really would like to see 2 new Colossus, if possible. I'm not saying it has to be majorly different. I'm not saying that there has to be even more Colossus. I'm just saying 2 more wouldn't hurt. You know, 2 more. I mean, we've got 16 total Colossus. So why not 18, you know? Just make it interesting, you know? Give us a reason for why we should purchase this newly rebuilt version of Shadow Colossus, other than the fact that it's going to be an Ultra 4K resolution. I swear, I've heard that phrase so many times this past E3, I have become sickening to it. Like, 1080p is good enough for me. It really is. But 4K is like, what? To me, it's kind of insane. But at the same time, I am glad that we are getting it. And again, because of how I've enjoyed the original and up to the PlayStation 3 of how much I've enjoyed it and everything like that, I really don't mind replaying it on the PS4 and seeing how much more better it could be. Or maybe they've improved some of the gameplay mechanics. Maybe they've done something different. Maybe they're enhancing it a bit more. And who knows, maybe they will do 2 more Colossus. I'm not quite sure. I really would like to, because I will try to do my best to kind of like show you some extra Colossus that they were considering doing. Because some of these things were like very interesting. One of them was like a giant phoenix. And the ideal concept was that you were swimming inside this lake, trying to lure it in. And as it swooped down to try to attack you, it would be trapped in the water. And you would have time to climb onto it to attack it before it went up to the air again to try to fight you or whatever. Or try to get you off of its back. And I can kind of see that working. But depending on where it would be at, I say it would be pretty difficult to put that out. And then, of course, there was another one where this particular Colossus was out in the open field. And it would basically trot along trying to charge at you, but your main concept idea was to try to run alongside it and then jump on this side while riding aggro. And to me, that seems a lot interesting, you know. That seems like that would be like a rush to try to get onto it. But at the same time, I can imagine the difficulty that would be, because you've got this one thing charging at you at all times. You know, this would be almost as crazy as that fish eye looking one. You know, where you're riding on aggro and you got the sandfish coming at you. And when you saw its eyes, you would shoot at it and it would eventually just hit the wall and stuff and be stunned to where you can jump on its back. That makes sense, but in this case, it was more like you were running alongside it, trying to jump onto the other one's back, and that would be interesting to me. Then again, that would be pretty difficult to try to pull that off, but who knows, maybe they can pull it off this time, you know. Like I said, they had potential ideals of other Colossus that they could have done. But they didn't, because either they were pushed on time or they thought that it would be unfair in terms of like the player trying to fight the Colossus. But anyway, though, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoy my talk on Shadow Colossus, because like I said, I was very blown away at the game, and still to this day, I still think it stands out as being like one of the most creative gameplay mechanics out there. Like, I don't think there are any other games that can match up to Shadow Colossus in terms of like how it was developed back in the PS2 days. So, but anyway though, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. This is BlackCross signing off. Take care, guys.